having seen that, you have a more positive impression of Livermore? Hands up for positive. And who think it gives kind of a more negative view of Livermore? A couple of hands. All right, that's all right. That's all right. Okay. So, first I'd like to introduce you to David. David Murray, who's one of the filmmakers here. Rachel Rainey was not able to be here tonight. She's also the other partner who helped bring this movie together. So, David, SF Gate, I went and did a little research on this. SF Gate said that your movie was part Mayberry, part Twin Peaks with a dash of Chernobyl. When I told people I was going to be up here, more than a couple suggested I ask you, what were you thinking? So for context, you had just finished a documentary on San Francisco's toll takers. And then this, what was the original concept and how did it change as you got footage?
Well, first of all, thanks to the Heritage Guild and the Vine Theater for hosting the film. Appreciate that. It's great to see it on the big screen after 20 years. And just full disclosure, we actually wrote that thing about Part Mayberry, and they just put it right in the paper without even... But anyway, that said, yeah, I think, when we started, we just saw the story about the time capsule in the newspaper. We had already done a series of short films on the toll takers at the East Bay, San Francisco Bridge, who no longer are there. As you know, it's automated now. And Rachel, who was my filmmaking partner, was really interested in the idea of sprawl and growth and traffic and how these things impact our society. And so that was why we did the Toll Collector series. And if anyone has seen that, I don't know, it's on the DVD. The Livermore DVD is an extra. And you can get those from the Heritage Guild. But those stories, instead of being about traffic, turned into this whole other crazy thing about all the weird stuff that the toll takers had to experience, on the job, the strange things that humans do to them. And it was really eye-opening and bizarre. So that one didn't quite go where we expected it to go. So now we saw this thing about the time capsule, and we're like, well, this is a great opportunity to talk about growth and how communities grow and whatnot. And as we started working on it, you can see that it kind of went off into some other directions and some other tangents. Didn't quite turn out to be, your typical PBS documentary that's about an issue and explores, these social justice things. It just turned into a strange portrait of the town. And, the time capsule became a centerpiece where the stories spun off of it. And there was a lot of interesting stories. Bill, I was a big fan of his work long before we did the project. When I saw his book was in the time capsule, I couldn't believe it. I was like, Rachel, this guy's a genius, you got to check him out. And so we, I showed her the book and she was into it. So I was like, this is something we got to pursue. So she called up the Heritage Guild, I believe, and talked to them. And they're like, of course, yeah, come on out. And they put us in touch with a lot of these folks and just kind of went from there. Yeah. One major event was, one was Bill allowing us to use his images from his book, which thank you for that. That really, brought a lot to the film. And then the Pfeiffers, who allowed us to use their centennial film. I mean, we couldn't believe it when we found that. They had this hour-long film. It had Adam Nordwall carving the totem pole in it. And all this stuff that everyone's talking about related to the time capsule, it's all in the film, So we were just like, we couldn't believe it. It was like a dream come true. So that really allowed us to take off and pursue it from there.
Great, thank you. I'm going to open it up to questions in a minute, but I'm going to introduce everybody here. The other thing we're going to do is have a little appreciation for everybody who's up here, which includes a bottle of wine. You're going to have to wait until we're done, even though you might feel like you'd like it right now. All right. Tim Sage, buddy. Oh, man. Yeah. At the time of the movie, you were the president of the Livermore Heritage Guild, which is celebrating 50 years this year. Did I mention that already? There we go, good. You were presiding over a bunch of history nuts, more typically interested in old tools and old photographs and that kind of thing. In this case, one of your history nuts was Barry Schrader. He orchestrated a lot of the time capsule project. Can you tell us a bit about working with Barry Schrader?
Yeah, I will try. Probably, well, you saw Barry in the movie a lot, Straw Hat. Barry was Mr. Involvement, Mr. Energy. He had worked for the newspapers, he knew everyone, and just really positive community guy. And he came to me, and the Heritage Guild at the time was really low-key. And he said, Tim, would you like to be, or would you be chairman of the Millennium Time Capsule thing? And I said yes for some reason. And so I forget the timing between Centennial and the Millennial one. But anyway, for some reason Barry said, well, the Centennial time capsule needs to be brought up. He said, I think it's corroding. And he was absolutely right. It was aluminum, and it was a surplus container from Dom's. And so they did find it, you know, and we repackaged it, and it was quite a ride being with Barry, because he's
a whirlwind.
Oh gosh, his ideas, you know, and just this and that. And I'm kind of a linear guy, and well, let's get this done, and then we'll move on to that. And Barry was, you know, he could talk about multitask, you know, he could do it. And so it was trying to keep up with Barry, and it was great. Met all these people, and it was just a busy time, really fun.
Thank you, thank you. We, of course, have the bottle of wine that you're also not going to start drinking just yet. But thank you, and we'll open it up to questions. Bill Owens. Served in the Peace Corps. I just learned that about you. Your brew pub, Buffalo Bills, was one of the first since Prohibition to open up. Your photo book, Suburbia, of course, as you said, helped you towards a fellowship from Guggenheim.
Correct.
That does appear to be pretty rare in Livermore.
Right. I received one letter.
Okay. And by the way, you were a photographer for our local paper, The Independent.
Yeah.
So we appreciate
Joan Kinney's here.
Joan is here. Yes, indeed. New Yorker magazine said that you balance empathy with a keen sense of the ridiculous. Did this movie balance empathy and the ridiculous? And can you give us an example, or what were you thinking, and how did this relate to your photography?
Thank you. I do want to give a shout out to Joan Kinney and The Independent, which was so important to my working and doing the book, because I could take one day off from the newspaper every Saturday and photograph for a year, put this project together. When you got to remember the years, in 1969, Altamont came on, The Independent Altamont, and the Rolling Stones haven't even happened. So when you move out here, the only thing that's happening in town is Lawrence Livermore Lab, and Sandia was the backbone of the community. But as you drive around, there is no there. There's no culture to see. It's just tract homes. And so when you drove into town, there's a sign that says, the Rotary, the Kiwanis, the Toastmasters, the Junior Women's Club, etc. welcome you. And I said, I want to photograph all those clubs. And so eventually I did that in my second book. But you have to dig and you have to be part of the community to really tell a story. And I was fortunate enough to live here and able to dig and put together Suburbia. So, and it's still, I couldn't believe tonight coming downtown how much the town has changed. It's beautiful. Every restaurant's popping, and it's a whole new, it's looking better than Pleasanton.
Okay, we'll leave it here for you. Tom Brabble. I don't know if as many people know Tom, but you relied on him. He was one of Livermore's firemen for a long time. Thank you very much for that. And then had a career in real estate still have a career in real estate a long time. So, but here you're known for a dim bulb. Not as it, but yeah, okay, just want to be clear. So you sell homes to people from out of town. When people come from out of town, do they know about our bulb? Do they know about our quirky Livermore? What do they know, and what do they say when they learn about us?
Absolutely not. Yeah, it's been pretty fascinating. I've been around that light bulb for 50 years, and it's still, so I can attest to 50 years of it being lit up. But people come into town. I'm sorry?
Is it still on now?
It is on this very moment. So people I talk to people from all over the world, just as Owen said in the movie, and it's pretty impressive when you see it, and it's pretty astounding. But it's a light bulb. But I think the most fascinating thing about it has been that people that come from all over the world and talk to people. I just talked to the BBC last month. So, and I've been retired for 20 years, and I still get phone calls and emails, more emails than phone calls. But it's really fascinating that it's still burning, and I suspect it'll burn for another 100 years. Probably way past my lifetime. But it's really kind of interesting. I was going to tell you a quick little story. So I had this one couple came from Germany, and they stopped by one day, and like every firefighter had to know something about the light. And I just happened to be there and say, hey, Tom, can you go do this? Oh, sure. So I went and met this couple, but they didn't speak any English. And so the son, who they were visiting as well, spoke great English, and he says, I'll interpret everything. And so that we were looking at the light, and if you haven't been there to the Fire Station 6 to look at the light, if you get an opportunity, go stand directly underneath the light bulb. And when you look at the filaments, it actually says on. So straight up at the filaments, it says O-N. And you have to look at it, or if I tell you that and you go look, you'll say, oh my gosh, it does say on. So the son explained that to the couple, and the older couple said, so what happens when this light bulb burns out? And it says off. But that's the kind of funny stories we get.
Thank you. One of the firemen in Station 6 was telling me, yes, we let people come in here and look at the light bulb, and then we tell them they can go out and watch the grass grow. Kathy Brown. So, founder of Tri-Valley Haven for Women. I did not realize that. California State Woman of the Year in 1990. You were elected for 6 terms as mayor of our city. And here you are featured looking for a lost time capsule. You played it pretty enthusiastically. When did you figure out that this was going to be a big dang deal, and how did that go?
Barry Schrader figured it out for me. I was in the middle of preparing for Russia, studying the Russian language, because I wanted to make sure I could speak the language before I went. And Barry kept calling me, Kathy, the time capsule, you've got to pay attention to the time capsule. You've got to get out here. Everybody's calling me. I said, they're calling you because of you. Now they're calling me all over the United States. It became a USA story. In fact, later on, I was at an event at Cal where I graduated. The journalism class had invited me in, and Dan Rather was there, and he saw me across the room, and he said, aren't you the mayor of that city? Time capsule, yeah. But Barry just kept at it and at it and at it, and there were times I hid from him. But then I met you and Rachel Rainey. Oh my God, what a team. And I was very, very enthusiastic. It was fun. But there is another story after this is when Barry decided that he was going to do another time capsule, right? The Centennial one. And he came into a city council meeting with a bomb casing from Sandia Laboratories, and he walked up to the desk while I was conducting a meeting, walked behind me with a pair of scissors and cut my hair to put it in the time capsule so somebody could clone me in 100 years. Go figure. I don't think you need another Kathy Brown. But that he was crazy, and I'm a great crazy, because I was a little crazy too. So we were a good team, and news reporters were on my doorstep. They were calling my home. He really helped this story go. Don't you think so?
Well, if it weren't for cruising, it'd be the only thing you're known for. Dick Jones. Dick Jones has been a photographer in this area forever and ever and ever, and also highly associated with the light bulb. And how many times can you take a picture of one light bulb, Dick?
I think we probably have 4,000 or 5,000 pictures of the light bulb now. My short version is Barry Schrader was the public relations guy for Sandia National Laboratory in 2000. And I was working there. And Barry came up to me and said, you know, we have a light bulb that's turning 100 years old. And I said, really? He says, yeah. I said, where is it? He said, well, it's down the street. Well, okay. Is it important? He said, yeah, we ought to do something. So I got in my car and ran down to the fire station and got a ladder. Tom was working there at the time. But by the way, we have a light bulb committee, and Tom and Tim and I are part of it, and Anna Sig somewhere in the office there. Anyway, we're still alive and well. But we went ahead and I went down there, got on this ladder, it's like 18 feet up, took a whole bunch of pictures, and then I thought, well, what are we going to do with it? Well, one of my buddies does websites. So I said, make me a website. And 2 days later, we had a website. And so then we all decided, well, maybe we ought to have a party or something. You know, it's 100 years. And we figured, well, maybe we get a couple hundred people might show up. So we kind of advertised it a little bit, and the fire department said they'd cook some hamburgers and get ice cream. And about 3:30 in the morning before we were going to have this party, we're getting phone calls from all over the world. Peter Jennings in New York, Katie Couric, everybody. By the way, we're going to be there. So can you call all the firemen we know, put on a uniform, look professional, go down there and get on national television. And we were hoping 200, and I think we ended up with like 700. And then we had another party for the 110, and now it's 122 and so going. And Tom wrote a book on it called
A Million Hours.
A Million Hours.
That was 2015, by the way.
Yeah. Well, we're getting close. Anyway, that's it. You need to really be proud of your city, Livermore, because, I mean, having all this stuff going on, we're working on it right now. He was talking about BBC. BBC wants to interview him. They FaceTimed me on one of the websites, Facebook, I think, it says, can I be your friend? And that's so they could send me emails so that I could provide them pictures and videos and all of this stuff. One of the stuntmen for Johnny Depp came up here and made a movie of us called Century of Light. By the way, you can go online anywhere and Google Century of Light, all these other ones, Livermore movie, you'll find them all. We're having fun.
Thank you.
David, I loved the music that accompanied this film. Right. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you found the composer, what he did to put it all together?
Yeah.
I love the soundscape.
Thank you for that. The composer was a really close friend of mine named Rama Kolesnikov. We were actually college roommates and played in several bands together throughout the years. I'm a musician also. And I said, hey, Rachel and I are working on this movie. He had done several soundtracks already for small independent films and some commercials, things like that. So he's like, yeah, of course, let's do it. And I said, well, there's one thing. It's an hour-long movie, and I want there to be music for the entire thing. He's like, what? An hour of music for one movie? I was like, sorry. He's like, oh, no problem. So we just got to it, and I worked really closely with him, trying to get the right mood. Sometimes we wanted it to sound a little ominous, sometimes a little whimsical. And I think he did a great job. I mean, even if you just listen to it by itself, it's really just a kind of beautiful, flowing piece of music. And so, yeah, now he's famous for playing in the world's longest-running Neil Diamond cover band called Super Diamond. So check it out. It's probably going to come to this area. Has anyone ever heard of Super Diamond? Yeah? Okay. All right. Yeah. So, yeah, that's it.
Perfect. I might have seen a hand back here. Anybody back here had another comment you want to make? Okay, no. I wanted to ask you, actually, David, many of the shots of the individuals, they were done with a wide angle.
Yeah.
And so there's this look. I don't know if you noticed as you're looking at you're up really close with some of these people. What was your thought on that? And clearly it was an intention. What were you thinking?
Well, one thing we wanted to do was try to make it seem like a different kind of movie, not just like a regular documentary you see on PBS or Frontline or something like that. And we wanted to, on the one hand, sort of spin off of Bill's work, the way he presented things, sometimes with a lot of symmetry and presenting the person in their environment. And so that was something we drew from his photographs to try to show our interviewees in the space that they were in, their living rooms or their Kathy's office, whatever. And so we used the wide angle lens for that. And we also wanted to bring about like a couple other things, like a sense of whimsy. We didn't want this to be too serious because obviously, time capsule, totem pole curse, right? And we wanted to feel a little like maybe a little dreamlike, maybe like, is this even real? Some people wondered, is this real or is this kind of set up? Is some of this fake? What's going on? So we wanted to kind of play with the notion of, what's really happening here and what am I watching?
Where does some of the footage come? The interview with Tilly Calhoun or George Miller. These are people who have sadly passed a long time ago. I was just wondering who recorded it originally.
Well, I shot all the footage. All the interviews were shot by me. And all the footage was shot by me, with the exception of the old footage, which was shot by the Pipers for their film A Century Has Passed, and when they graciously allowed us to use that. And we had a couple other things, like the shot of Robert Oppenheimer, I think was given to us from Sandia Laboratory or Livermore Laboratory. But all the interviews were shot by us and conducted by us. And I think that's pretty much, there might have been a couple miscellaneous shots we got from somewhere else, but it was all shot by us. We had a little tiny camera. This was when a format called Mini DV came out in around 2000, and it was a tape about this big. And so you could have these little tiny cameras. So our camera was, about, you could hold it in one hand. I mean, it was about, the size of a shoe, it was very small. And so it made it easy to kind of get right up close to somebody and not have it feel like this big thing right in their face, and they kind of forget that the camera's even there. So yeah.
Great. Yeah, and of course, remembering that this was 2003, so we're at the 20-year anniversary of this thing, the 20-year anniversary of a picture looking back at our history.
So this is for Kathy, and you went to Russia. You were the first mayor to go. It's been 20 years. So first of all, first part of the question is, were you scared when you first went? And the second part of the question is, are you still in contact?
That's a really good question. Yes, I was scared because I did the cover exercises that you did under my school desk when I was a kid.
That's right.
So, and it's a secret city. It's not on any map. There were 10 of them, and I think I don't think Snizhins is on a map still. It was called Chelyabinsk in 70, and then they named it Snizhins. It's between Yekaterinburg and Chelyabinsk. I don't know if you're familiar with the Europe. It's in Siberia. But once I showed up, the people were really friendly. I met the mayor, and he could have been the mayor of Pleasanton. It was, except for the language barriers, we both cared about our city. We cared about our senior citizens. We wanted to make sure that the future for our kids, was a good one. And we created a very close relationship. I worked for the Department of Energy. Well, I was contract after I got out of being your mayor. They asked me to stay on and work with Russia. So I was probably off and on 7 years until I was contract. So I just left the contract. Well, plus the president. When I first went, it was Clinton and Yeltsin, and then Bush and Putin came in, and Bush's attention was more in Iraq than it was in Russia, and I was going in on the Nuclear Cities Initiative, and that went away. But I still have a very close friendship. The mayor and I became very close. His wife and I are really good friends. I got to take Tom in one time. They allowed him in, and they really liked him. He liked the Russian vodka. I could go, another time, if you want to touch base with me and go to coffee, I'll tell you about it. It's just a very long story. But yes, today, I am still close. We communicate not so much on Skype anymore. We go on to another app that's kind of outside of Russia, and I have access to. So, and the issue with Ukraine has changed a lot, but not our relationship. I've also got friends in Ukraine.
What's happened to the totem pole? Oh my. The totem pole. Anybody else? I can give a bit of a story on that one.
Do it. Go ahead.
Okay, so the totem pole was indeed taken down because it was in really bad shape. The city said for maintenance. The truth is that it was a wooden pole that had been up for 50 years outside, and it looked like it was a wooden pole that had been up outside for 50 years. What's next? Well, as it happens, there are those now who feel that it's inappropriate to use those Native American icons as part of our city. It's an inappropriate use of those icons. So there are, and we have to, we do think about other people's cultures a little differently today than we did 50 years ago, and I think that that's fair. There are some of us, though, that are thinking of perhaps a tall, round, wooden art piece that has icons representing Livermore that could be in Centennial Park. And so we are discussing that within the Heritage Guild and with others. And we think that there may be a possible compromise in there. So that's our hope at this point. Currently, the totem pole is lying on its side in the maintenance yard, and it is in bad shape. It is not going to go back up. Well, I have a couple of pictures of it. No, it's outdoors, but it's covered. They have a tarp over it. It's been outdoors for 50 years. Yeah.
I'm just wondering, have I been mispronouncing the word rodeo my whole life? It's more rodeo.
Who here wants to be the authority on that one? Whether it's rodeo or rodeo? Oh man!
Pass on that one.
You've got a bunch of people going, don't trap me in that. I think you'll find the older folks here. Well, see, do we have let me go with a vote. Hey, we got a great group to ask. How about rodeo? Hands up. Wow. Okay. And how about rodeo? Hands up. All right. Okay. Well, there you go. I think that's the best answer I can give you right there. Okay. Anybody here want to say anything specific about the curse on the sewer system? None? Yeah. So, I believe he said that he never actually technically lifted it. Is that
I
right?
think I heard that, but I'm not positive.
Good idea.
Some years ago, Adam Nordwall conducted a ceremony in front of the totem pole there where he did lift the curse on the sewer system. As what I heard is he denies that he did that. But I have photographic evidence that he did.
Tom is best to answer. It has it ever been moved, and has it ever been out? Is there ever a danger to the power? All the questions about keeping the lights on.
Yeah, like Dave said, it's in the book. No, actually, that's a very good question. And the light bulb was moved. It was initially installed on 2nd Street, where the Wells Fargo Bank is today. There was a hose cart building, if you will, constructed in the 1800s there. The light bulb was installed there first in 1901. And then on 1st Street, that was also part of the town hall on 2nd Street. And then it was moved to the new town hall on 1st Street at 1st of Maple, or 1st of McLeod, I'm sorry. And then that was in 1906. And then that building got kind of old, and we built a new station on East Avenue, and that was in 1976, when we moved the light bulb very ceremoniously to Station 6 with red lights and siren. Frank Mall was the city electrician.
You turned it off?
Well, there's a strange story about that. So the light bulb was going to be out from making the move. So what we did is we timed it, but we got all the location prepared and ready to go at the new station on East Avenue. Frank Mall was the city electrician, and he was actually holding the box with the light bulb. And they were driving down East Avenue, and he says, they had a box with this light bulb in cotton, all wrapped up. They didn't want to have any damage to it. And he says, I looked down, and he says, the filaments were going like this in the box. So he took it out, and he held on to the light bulb all the way to the station. The light bulb was out for 22 minutes. The interesting thing is, Adolph Correa was his assistant. He was downstairs, or down the ladder. Frank was up on the ladder, got the wire connected for the light bulb, and he told us, Adolph, go ahead, turn the power on. And he turned the power on, and nothing happened. The light bulb didn't come on. We went, oh no, what did we do? And so Frank, being the electrician that he was, he realized that there was a on, off switch on the socket. He went click, and the light came on. So, but that's one of the times it went out. But it did go out again. So someone else, what do we do for backup power for this thing? So there's no rheostats, there's nothing in the walls, no trick things. It's just household current. But we in 2001, when we did the celebration, we first knocked out the city website because there were so many hits. The city made us get our own website, and I told the fire chief at the time, Stu Gary, I said, we need to get something to back this up. So we got a UPS system, uninterrupted power supply, and we put that in line with the light bulb. Well, that worked great. I retired in 2003, and in 2013, 10 years later, they called me and they said, Chief, you need to get down here. This light is out. So it did go out again. And because it was all over the world, we were getting calls from all over the world. And so on my way down to the station, because I'm thinking, oh, geez, now you're going to have to say something, They told them, get ready, the reporters are going to, be there. And they said, no, Chief, they're already here. This was 5 o'clock in the morning. So I was on my way down there, reminding you that I was retired 10 years. They're still calling me, Chief. They're still telling me to come down and handle something. So I'm driving down the street. I go, you know what? We put a UPS system in there. So I called them on my cell, and I said, hey, just get an extension cord, bypass the UPS. And when I drove up to the station, this thing was as bright as it could be. It was back on again. It was the UPS. So it's been through 3 cameras and 1 UPS system. They now have the UPS on a battery backup power because you have to check the battery once in a while.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that for Adam, this thing with the totem pole was really not a big part of his history or anything. He was a real character of the highest order. And Rachel and I and my wife Debbie drove out to Arizona, where he was living on a reservation at the time, to do his interview. And we pull up, and out in front of his house is like a 50-foot tall pile of spare tires. I mean, there must have been like 1,000 spare tires. Like, what is that? It's like, oh, I'm building a sweat lodge. It's okay. But anyway, he was also instrumental in the takeover of Alcatraz Island in, what was that, 1968, 1970? I'm not sure when that was. But he was one of the team of Native Americans that planned that and occupied the island for however long that was. So he was a real interesting guy with a lot of history. And what we're seeing here, he was just having fun with that, obviously, and there's a lot more to the guy that was worth checking out.
One more question about the light bulb. It was mentioned that there was a live webcam that was on it. Is there still one going now, or was that just...
Are we still on a live webcam, Tom? So I want to check right now. Tell us the site.
So real quick, yes, we have, it's outlasted all these webcams as well. But nonetheless, yes, there's a webcam on the site, and it is still live. But right now, the internet connection to our website we're in progress here, making some progress on that aspect of it. But right now, in order to see the live webcam, you have to go to the city website, and there's a link there to get to it. So once we get our website back up and running, we're going to get that switched over from the city website to the centennialbulb.org website.
Is there going to be a sequel?
David, what are you thinking?
We have to create some disturbance.
The answer is no. That was my last film. We tried to make another one, and fundraising was just too complicated, and I wasn't interested in doing that. Rachel went on to work for PBS, and she still works in the development of documentaries for PBS in Durham, North Carolina. So she's made a career out of doing that. But no, for me, that was it. I concentrated on being a musician, and I do work on other people's documentaries, doing graphics as part of my career. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. I want to mention, of course, you've got a panel of luminaries up here. We didn't ask them to stick around, but they do have to escape somehow or another, so if you want to chat with them, you can. Bill Owens has his books out front there. You can take a look at some of the continuing work that Bill has done. Tim has been a part of the Heritage Guild since before it was a Heritage Guild, I think, and you can chat with him if you have any questions about the Guild. There are a bunch of other Guild members around here. Kathy Brown has stories aplenty about Livermore, as do the rest of the folks up here. Thank you for coming to see our story, and good evening. And the DVDs are available through the Heritage Guild, so we have the DVD of the movie.